If somebody said to me, would I do an arranged marriage for my son? I would absolutely say no. And this is a reason why. Hi, I'm Shaima. I'm a transformational coach, and I wanted to talk about in this video about arranged marriages and what is really not talked about because it's just assumed and unsaid. And because every family is so different, really, and when women get married and daughters get married into other and either move in to other families or just be part of a different family system, it's a big take on. And as women, we are sort of trained really to be the adaptive one, the real patient ones. And adaptability was always a skill that was sort of groomed in a way as an asset. So if you were a girl and if you were adaptable and if you had a lot of patience, you were extremely marketable, because what it really meant was that you could fit in no matter what. And personally for me, that was given. That was my temperament. And that's what I was brought up to believe, that I could move into any family and adapt to that and the systems and their way of being. Now, if somebody said to me, would I do an arranged marriage for my son? I would absolutely say no. And this is a reason why. The thing about the arranged marriages in the system, especially the one I was part of, where you really can't meet people sort of more than 3 times for religious seasons because it needs to be a chaperone there, because there should be no hanky-panky and all the rest of it. There is a religious element of that. We really don't get to know the person. And if a family is going out of their way not to be honest about something, then you've got 2 different families from very different intent and very different way of being. So I came from a family, very honest people and with a lot of integrity. So I just assumed, and this was a big assumption of mine, that everybody was like that. And it was a real awakening to know, no, you can't take everybody at face value. People are so covered with shame and other emotional aspects that it's very hard to be around people who are not self-aware in that way or are just not brought up that way. I have known people who've used arranged marriages to hide certain elements like sexuality, because the assumption is made that when people get married, it's fine. Priorities change and you get into a routine and you have children and the focus goes on the children and so forth. So the needs of a woman is never prioritized. There's an understanding it's the family unit, and that being the whole system to hold everybody is more powerful than the individual's needs. The other thing I wanted to talk about was, in an arranged marriage, it is when people come together, it is assumed this person is going to take on what the values are. So if a girl is educated, then the family might say, oh, actually, we don't want her to work when she has children. And a lot of the times women do agree on that. But what happens is as time goes on and life goes on, human beings as individuals grow and evolve. And the beliefs that we had as 15-year-olds and 19-year-olds doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have the same beliefs at the age of 40. And that then becomes a battleground. Even 5-6 years into the marriage, if somebody turns around and says, actually, no, I don't want to do this, or I want to do that. And people bring up that you agreed, when we brought the proposal to you, you agreed to do this. So then you're left with the conundrum of, oh, it's like this or nothing. And it almost feels like there is no debate. It's like you're going against the word. So you'd promised that you would do this, and now you're going back on your word. So it really There is no space for evolution, and human beings need to grow. We need to be curious. We can be in cultural systems and religious systems, but yet grow our knowledge, grow our mind, and circumstances change. You could have a child that needs more care, parents need more care, and so life and the flow of life has to be there in order for some sort of movement adaptation. Women can't be held responsible all the time with the line, but you agreed when we brought the proposal. One of the things about arranged marriages, which still is very valid right now, especially for women, is if for whatever reason it doesn't work out and then there is a need to leave, you almost get put out of the system because you have been divorced. So you couldn't make it work, or you're not a virgin. And it almost seems that there are a lot of other single women who are younger and who are virgins and who haven't been through the system. So they get a priority. So it automatically feels for divorced women in the arranged marriage cycle that you're laid down on the list for people. And so a lot of the conversations that happens, and really it was in my case as well, you have to then, when you get another arranged marriage proposal, you have to look at your downfalls, your negatives, that you've already been married. So you shouldn't expect the creme de la creme, for instance. And if you have children, then it's also very much like somebody else has to take that responsibility on as well. A lot of women also are reluctant to get divorces if they don't have parents who are supportive of allowing them to come back when they realize, actually, this is not working. This was actually a huge mistake. I did not realize this is what it was going to be like. I didn't realize this is what they were like, especially when you haven't really spent time with them or you haven't lived with people. It's a real eye-opener of what being married and what eternal life on this planet seems like. So a lot of women who have parents who are not financially stable, they really find it very difficult to make that decision because they feel there's not a safe place to come home to who will financially look after them or their child. That becomes one of the major decision-making factors. The other one is that not all parents are open to the reasons why you might want to end it. So, for instance, religion says if he's an alcoholic or he's beating you up and so forth, there are grounds for divorce. But if those two factors aren't happening and you bring other factors in, a lot of parents don't look at it as a good enough reason to divorce. I was very fortunate to have parents that were very supportive, and I guess that's where I get my fair and unfairness from, and what is right and what is wrong in terms of human condition, and who my parents have always been, and I've had a very strong sense of integrity from them, is the understanding of religion as this is what it is and this is why it is, and the understanding of it. And it doesn't matter what people say, there is a way of treating people correctly. There is a right and wrong in how you treat human beings. And so for me to come back, when I had mentioned the reasons I wanted to come back, were always very clear and the terms were always very amicable for me to come back to, because regardless of what anybody else said, they knew me well enough to know who I was and the honesty that I represent and the honest person that I am. My work for women who are in deep-rooted systems, culturally and family systems, and having problems is not about leaving marriages or systems. That's not what it's all about. It's about a greater understanding of themselves and why they think the way they do. And where are they getting what I call is the seeing from? Where are they seeing it from? Are they seeing it from their fear? Are they seeing it from an experience, in a child experience from the family unit, and so forth? And if it's really serving them, and what is stopping them communicate their needs and their voice in terms of what they need in their marriages, either with their husbands or with the in-laws. So it is really bringing the space and the difference between who they are and their fears so they can really step into their power and find the courage to speak what they want rather than feeling, I have to run away. They're never going to understand and this is never going to work. So it's almost like they've already made up their mind because the place that they're speaking from is such, it almost feels like resignation of what the systems are and how it's going to be taken. And I wish I had somebody that I could speak to when I went through the confusion and not knowing. There really wasn't anybody who could hold space for me or had the experience or the knowledge or of a way of being that did not fit into these boxes that everybody has around them.